Okay, I've got to bang the gavel, he said. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call to order the 355th meeting of the City of Laurel Board of Appeals. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Whitley, Mr. Lee,
Here.
Miss Les,
Here.
Miss Collins,
Here.
Mr. Mitchell,
Here.
Chairwoman Chenault.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chairwoman.
All right, item number 2 is approval of the minutes of the July 25th meeting. May I have any corrections, amendments, or a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the minutes as stated at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. May I have a second? Thank you.
I wasn't here.
We weren't, I forgot you weren't here, okay.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Miss Les,
Yes.
Miss Collins,
I was not here, so.
Chairwoman Chenault.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Now, since this seems to be a very interesting evening, we're going to do something a little different, and we're going to go into executive session prior to hearing the special exception application number 894. And this is, as of today's date, I have to read this statement. The following statement is made regarding the recess of the Board of Appeals to executive session on this date. The reason for recessing to executive session is to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice regarding agenda item number 3. The executive session of the board may be held in accordance with the provisions of 3305B7 of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland at the call of chairman or upon petitions of the chairman by at least 2 members of the board. So with that, we're going to go into executive session, a couple of moments, and then we will be back. All right? Now. continue with the meeting. The next item on the agenda is going to be item number 8, I'm sorry, special exception application number 894, resolution number 1903 BOA 116, Washington Boulevard, filed by Francesca DeMauco-Palminteri, seeking special exception approval to open a medical cannabis dispensary. May we hear a reading of the record?
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. Special exception application number 894 was filed on July 22nd, 2019 by Francesca DeMauco-Palminteri to operate a medical cannabis dispensary at 116 Washington Boulevard in Laurel, Maryland. Under the date of August 1st, 2019, the application and a cover letter asking for comments were also sent to the following agencies: the Maryland State Highway Administration, Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission, Prince George's County Health Department, Maryland Department of Planning, Baltimore Gas and Electric, the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Prince George's County Department of Permitting, Inspections and Enforcement, Verizon, and Prince George's County Public Schools Department of Capital Programs. Under the date of August 1st, 2019, a memorandum asking for comments was sent to the following city departments: Department of Public Works, the Police Department, the Department of Parks and Recreation, and the Office of the Fire Marshal and Permit Services. The following agency responses were received. No issues with the requests or comments from WSSC, DPI, Prince George's County Health Department, Maryland State Highway Administration, and the Maryland National Park and Planning Commission. The following responses were received from city departments. There were no issues with the requests from the Police Department, the Parks and Rec Department, and the Laurel Fire Marshal and Permitting Services Department. The Laurel Public Works stated the following: this department has reviewed the special exception application for Pure Hannah Synergy Medical Dispensary at 116 Washington Boulevard. The applicant is going to use one floor of the two-story building with approximately 2,200 square feet of space to operate a cannabis dispensary. The following comments and recommendations are offered at this time. No significant traffic impact is expected from this dispensary at this time. However, this facility can only be accessed from southbound US Washington Boulevard, which is a state-maintained roadway. The applicant is responsible for any state permit, traffic impact study, and site access improvements if it is required by the state. If any utility cuts will be performed on the city street or a public alley, the restoration work must follow the city standard that require the permanent patches to cut an area with a 2-inch mill and overlay from curb to curb and a minimum of 25 feet to each direction of the cut. The applicant is responsible for all damage within the public right-of-way. On August 5th, 2019, a letter explaining the nature of the application and advertising of the scheduled public hearings was sent by certified mail to all contiguous property owners. All return receipts were received. A memorandum from the City of Laurel Planning Commission to the Board of Appeals dated September 19, 2019 reads as follows. At the regular meeting of the City of Laurel Planning Commission held on September 10, 2019, the following action was taken on the subject zoning application. Mr. Wilson made a motion to deny the recommendation of special exception application number 894 for 116 Washington Boulevard, Laurel, Maryland, to the Board of Appeals. Mr. Welford seconded Mr. Wilson's motion. There was no discussion of reason for the motion. Mr. Welford voted no, and Chairman Kish cast the final vote of yes. The motion to recommend denial of the application passed with a 2-to-1 vote. The proposed use meets all City of Laurel zoning requirements for a medical cannabis dispensary. It is recommended that the City of Laurel Board of Appeals approve special exception application number 894 with the following conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall obtain a City of Laurel use and occupancy permit. Number 2, the applicant shall allow the City of Laurel Police Department to conduct a walkthrough of the property prior to operation of the business. Number 3, the applicant shall obtain a City of Laurel sign permit. Number 4, the applicant shall install a no loitering sign in all parking areas. And number 5, the applicant shall comply with all state and local laws and regulations for protection of the use of the property. The file contains a certificate of publication verifying that this application and public hearing was advertised in the September 19, 2019 issue of the Prince George's Sentinel. The file contains an affidavit signed by the applicant attesting that the zoning sign has been placed on the subject property, has remained and shall remain until a decision is reached by the Board of Appeals. That concludes the reading of the file, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchum. We have a sign-up sheet, and is there anyone here to speak on behalf of the applicant? Would you come to the podium and give us your name and address for the record, please?
For the record, my name is Chris Hatcher with the law firm of Lurch, Early & Brewer, here on behalf of the applicant. My law office is located at 7600 Wisconsin Avenue, Maryland.
Welcome.
And first and foremost, I just want to thank staff and the Board of Appeals for working with us on this application, processing it through the process. I think that there's been a lot of back and forth and commentary about the application, so we're really excited to be before you. In preparing for this hearing, we did sort of take a look at all your previous special exception hearings that you have online, and that really provides us with a sense of optimism and comfort, because I understand that in all the previous applications, you've really focused on the law and applied the facts to the law and make your determination. And so that certainly provides a lot of comfort going forward. With that being said, since there has been a lot of history on this use, not necessarily this site, but this use, I think it's helpful just to provide some history of the journey of how we got here. So in 2006, Pirahana was awarded a dispensary, a pre-approval for a medical cannabis dispensary by the state of Maryland. It was one of two locations provided by the state. So between 2016 and 2018, my client spent the better part of those 2 years going through portions of Calverton, Fort Meade, College Park, and obviously the city of Laurel. So those 4 areas that are in Senatorial District 21, trying to find locations. And so through those 4 areas, they must have evaluated over 200 locations. And so one dispensary was issued. We got one license. Spent 2 years finding a location. Looked in 4 areas and over 200 locations, and really settled on what we thought was a really good location, which we believe met all the required findings, which is the initial application that was submitted in 2018. We filed that application. We processed that application. We had a hearing in front of the Planning Commission on that application, and that hearing was really informative for us. There were a lot of people that showed up expressing a lot of concern, some dealing with historic issues, some preservation, and just some site-related issues. And the product of that very long and informative hearing was that the Planning Commission on that application recommended denial based on the lack. Based on that, my client sort of sat down and contemplated the next steps for the site. And as you guys are aware, when we were before you, when this use and this applicant was before you last time, we decided to withdraw that application. We felt that the community spoke very loud and large, and we thought that we took note of some of the determinations that the Planning Commission made, and we decided to look for another site based on those factors. Fortunately, we were able to find this site, 116 Washington Boulevard, very close. And so once we found it, we filed an application. We went through the process, had another Planning Commission hearing, and we believe we may have made the right decision, because where there was maybe 20 people speaking in opposition before, only really one person came to that hearing and spoke. And candidly, I'm not entirely sure whether it was an opposition or just listing some concerns, but either way, only one person spoke. So we do feel like to a large degree we recognized and some of the concerns that were outlined and addressed them by deciding to move on to a site that had a little less history associated. As Mr. Love mentioned, the Planning Commission didn't necessarily give us any reasons why they made the determination that they made. And so if you guys will just bear with us in an effort to make sure that that our record is full and complete, I think we're just going to address just a few issues that may have occurred in the past, that people have expressed in the past, in an effort just to make sure that the record is full. With that, there are three main issues that have come before, that have arisen out of this application in the past, one of which dealing with the medical marijuana dispensary not being within 1,000 feet of a house of worship. Another one being dispensary not being within 1 mile of another dispensary, and issues associated with just general issues associated with market need. So section 2022-75A1 of the code states in relevant part, premises shall not be located within 1,000 feet of real property owned by Prince George's County Board of Education or House of Worship. The operative words in there for us when we're reading that is real property owned by a house of worship. Candidly, there are two located within that 1,000 feet, but neither one of them are owned by those institutions. We thought that was sufficient for purposes of the application, but in an effort to have a belt and suspenders, we sought guidance from the Attorney General of the state, who provided an opinion, which is in your backup information, to directly address this issue, and they concurred with our determination that if the property isn't owned by the house of worship, then it does not violate that specific criteria. So as it relates to the 1,000 foot within a house of worship, this application doesn't satisfy that criteria. Another issue that did arise during the course of this application was being located within 1 mile of another medical marijuana dispensary. There are two medical marijuana dispensaries in the general vicinity of this location. It's Blue Pharma, and you guys should recognize that. You approved that application in 2017, and Revolution Relief. For purpose of this finding, Blue Pharma isn't entirely relevant because it is beyond 1 mile. But interestingly enough, Resolution Relief is within that geographic distance. But most interestingly, it is outside the municipal boundaries of the city of Laurel. So in the extensive brief that we submitted as part of this application, we analyzed this quite exhaustively. But to sort of summarize why it not being located within the municipal boundaries of Laurel is relevant, it really boils down to two reasons. One is an issue of statutory interpretation, so statutory construction. When the council decided to adopt the medical cannabis legislation, it was intended to apply in the city of Laurel as defined by the charter of the city of Laurel. And since that is outside the boundaries, the measuring distance sort of stopped that municipal line. But more importantly for this body, there are general policy concerns. For example, it could be considered counterintuitive to allow a jurisdiction that isn't directly involved in your master planning and in your zoning decision to be able to dictate what happens inside your municipal boundary. I think that the city spends a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of outreach to develop plans, and to allow a political subdivision in a county that is not participated in that process dictate what you can and can't do inside your boundary. Really frustrate your plan, short term and long term. The final issue is an issue that really relates to the issue of weed. And this goes back to one of the initial reasons why the Planning Commission in the original application decided to deny our application. So, a couple reasons why that's not entirely relevant. First and foremost, when the city council decided to adopt medical marijuana legislation, made it permitted by special exception, the city could have included in that resolution a need requirement. The city included a need requirement for fill stations. They include a need requirement for liquor stores. There are any number of uses in the table of uses that do have need requirement, and this isn't one of them. And there is case law that directly says that if there is not a need requirement in the code, then a basis for denial based on need isn't a sufficient basis for denial. But taking a step back, there are any number of locations throughout the state where there are clusters of these types of uses. For example, in North Bethesda, there are 5 medical marijuana dispensaries around the metro. In Silver Spring, Tacoma Park, there are 4 medical marijuana dispensaries within 1 mile of each other. And they've been there for any number of years. So if it can certainly work in those locations, certainly don't see why it wouldn't work here. And candidly, there are some uses that just like each other. So those were the specific issues that came up through the process. But evaluating special exceptions in general, I think it makes a little bit of sense to spend a little time on special exceptions in general. As I'm sure you guys are aware, certainly by definition, special exceptions are permitted uses, just subject to some additional conditions. So city council determined that there are general findings for special exception, and then there are specific findings for this special exception. We submitted again our special statement of justification, which analyzes everything exhaustively, as well as staff report, which analyzes any number pretty exhaustively. But there's one thing that we do just want to address more specifically. So when you are evaluating a special exception, in order to disapprove a special exception, you have to find that one of the findings that you have to make is that this special exception at this location will have an adverse impact that is more than what it would be for any special exception for this special exception at any other location. Your council is very familiar with that legal case called Schultz v. Fritz, and what I can tell you is that in our analysis, we provided backup to suggest that we met all the required findings, and there was adverse impact. Staff didn't analyze any adverse impact. The agencies that heard from that referrals didn't hear any adverse impact from them at all. The Planning Commission, no questions were asked that even implicated adverse impact, and we didn't really get one question that was relevant that implicated adverse impact. After reflecting on the record, I can't think of one adverse impact that's even in the record to base a decision denial on. That being said, in an abundance of caution, and to make sure that the record is more full, I'd like to call Ken Dunn, who is our land planner on this application, try to qualify him as an expert in land planning. Can you please state your name, address, and occupation?
Ken Dunn with offices at 4300 Forbes Boulevard in Lanham, here in Prince George's County. I'm with Soltez. My occupation is certified land planner certified through the American Institute of Certified Planners.
Please describe your profession in land planning.
I have over 30 years of land planning experience in Prince George's County alone, along with some surrounding and adjacent jurisdictions.
Have you ever testified as an expert witness in the field of land?
Certainly I have. I've testified in multiple jurisdictions. I've testified in Prince George's County a number of times over every decade I've been employed at Sole Test.
At this point, I'd like to submit Ken's resume into the record as qualified planning.
Christian, yes?
Ken, are you familiar with the site?
I am indeed.
Are you familiar with the general findings of a special exception?
Yes, I am.
Are you familiar with specific findings for a special exception as contained in Laurel Code as it medical marijuana?
Yes, I am.
Did you draft an analysis which analyzes the general and specific finding of special exception for medical cannabis? Laurel.
I did. I drafted an opinion for all of the general conditions for approval of a special exception. All those findings, as well as the specific findings that are, referenced as part of the general condition.
Can you verify that this is, in your opinion?
That is my opinion.
This time, I'd like to submit the opinion of an expert land planner into the record.
Be fine.
In an effort to be mindful of everyone's time, did you find in your capacity as an expert in land planning that the proposed use at the proposed site complies with all the specific findings and all of the general findings and specific findings of a medical marijuana dispensary in the state?
I did. I in my review of the site, I found that, and in addition to be mindful of everybody's time, I did find that all 5 conditions for granting of a special exception were met, and that the 5th condition of those general conditions, which is essentially a placeholder for the specific 6 conditions, were also met.
In your capacity as an expert land planner, you believe that this site presents any adverse effects that are above and beyond that?
I do not.
Gentlemen, I have a question. I don't know if it's part of your bag or not. They're occupying the first floor.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Who will be occupying the second floor? Do you know? I mean, is there any kind of combination that isn't allowed in your use of planning with a cannabis shop downstairs and what goes upstairs?
Ma'am, what I can do is I can refer you to what your code says, because that's where we have clarity on that issue. And what I would tell you is that uses that shouldn't be commingled would be those that are listed in your code, specifically to have specific distances. And I think we've referenced those a number of times. Houses of worship would be one. Property owned by the Board of Education would be another.
All right. So other than that, anybody else could be upstairs.
Subject to the conditions of the specific zone that we're in,
Right.
yeah.
Thank you.
If I may, in any potential conditions that you guys may place, but just for your reference, we are leasing the entire building. We're only using.
All right. Thank you.
Just have a few more things I'd like to get into the record. That's all right. Thank you. I have a letter of support from Mr. Erlin, who is a lifelong resident of Maryland, who owns a business in Beltsville. He's a registered caregiver who's taking care of his mother who has throat cancer, who also obviously benefits from the medication that we are providing, or that we'd like to provide.
Yes, we have copies of the letters.
Right. Do you have a copy of the letter from Ginger Miller as well?
Yeah.
Okay. And a copy of the letter from the District 21 delegates as well?
Yes.
Again, in an effort to be efficient with everyone's time. We appreciate staff's recommendation of approval and respectfully ask the Board of Appeals to approve the findings of facts and conclusions of law. And we're prepared to respond to any questions.
Staff, do we have, board members, do we have any questions at this point?
Just one, and that is the letters that were
Submitted?
that they will be a part of the record, although not testimony. The letters in support of it will be a part of the record, correct? Then I'm satisfied with that. Thank you.
And we do have just one or two folks that do just want to come to testify as well, but we did want to submit those records. Make sure, and thank you for verifying.
I see that you're going to be open 7 days a week. Is that typical? I mean, it says in here Monday through Sunday from 10 to 8.
Move all my binders, I apologize.
It's pretty customary for dispensary to function now in Maryland and across various pharmacies, Rite Aid. Yes, just get avail of their medicine every day.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman and members of the Board of Appeals. My name is Francesca DeMauco-Palminteri. I'm the applicant and the owner of Pure Synergy. And I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank you for your time and consideration for this. This has been a very long journey, nearly 4 years in the making, actually, since the time that I applied. But I'm very encouraged and grateful for the positive feedback and support received from the members of the community, the state, and local officials. As I mentioned, I've been working on this project to bring medical care to certified patients of Maryland for almost 4 years, and I am ready to make a positive contribution to the city of Laurel. With your approval, Pure will have the opportunity to provide an important medical service that can help hundreds of patients in need for this type of care. Not only does Pure intend to uplift the medical wellness of state-certified patients, we also intend to contribute positive to the Laurel workforce and hire up to 15 full and part-time employees who either drive or commute to the site interchangeably throughout the week to help support our medical patients. Through these years, as Mr. Hatcher has mentioned, I've explored over 200 sites across the entire district. I've looked at sites next to baseball fields near Fort Meade. I've looked at former bagels places further into Laurel. I've looked at industrial parks that maybe could fit. And I have found 2 in the last 3 years that actually complied by right on every level. The site that we tried to pursue last year, and this site 116 Washington Boulevard. And conclusively, this is the site where we feel most confident by the letter of the law that can really help carry out what the state has awarded me as a licensee to be able to do for the medical patients in the district. And that is really to invest in the city of Laurel, to be a member of the community, to be an aid for medical patients to receive the care that they so desperately need. And I will do everything in my power and my company's power to set a gold standard for corporate citizenship for the city of Laurel. Thank you again for your time and consideration. I'm here to prepare to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. No, thank you very much.
I have one more person.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ash. I'm with Price School Floors. We're located directly across the street from this building. Sorry, public speaking is not my forte, so I apologize about that. First, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you guys. Past 20 years that we've been there, it hasn't been like this. Remember drug dealers, prostitutes walking up and down the street, that corner, gun violence. Seems like every other day was an episode of cops in front of our store. You guys cleaned up the city very nicely, so I would like to thank you for that. Which brings me to my next point. That's about empty building. My experience is when the building sits empty for too long, eventually you have, for lack of a better term, wrong people will come around, break into the buildings. Homeless people will start sleeping around it. So for my sake, I would like the building to be occupied. So it looks better for the city. It attracts more investment. It makes it a place that like a building can sit empty for too long. So like hopefully drives more investment to the city. Last month, we were about to hire an employee. I would say over 75% of applicants we got were people who lived in the city of Laurel. They either wanted to be closer to home so they didn't have to do the commute, and they were willing to get a pay cut to do that, or people who didn't have jobs. As I heard, she said she's willing to hire up to 15 full-time or part-time employee. That's a big chunk of change. Like, I think that would make a good impact on our community, and it would be good for my business. Lastly, I have two kids. They're 2 years and 3 years old. They come to my office, I would say 2 or 3 times a week, depending on the week. My wife works there, my father works there, my mother works there. So if I thought for a second this business would harm my family, my business, or my community, I would be talking against it, standing right here and be like, please don't approve it. But I don't see a reason for that. So I would like you guys to approve it and have that building occupied. So it would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you. Hatcher, where are we?
I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we're done.
Okay, good. All right, we have a few people that would like to come to the podium and speak as well. So we'll go to the sign-up sheet for their voices. And we have Gene Wilkes. If you would like to give us your name and address for the record, sir.
Hi, Gene Wilkes. I live in Dickerson, Maryland, 20910 Peachtree Road, and I own the Tasty Diner, which is adjacent to this 116.
Okay.
And I have a few concerns that I'd like to bring to your attention. This applicant had a meeting with the planning board, and they stated that they had leased the entire building. And my concern are, what are you going to do with the second and third floor? You know, what's coming there? Because there's only 16 parking spaces in the rear of this building. Now, the front looks extremely nice, but you need to look at the back, in the back of those buildings. It's adjacent to the adult bookstore. And the adult bookstore attracts a lot of different kinds of folks. And that alley attracts a lot of different kinds of folks. So my point being, I don't believe that their customer will go through that alley, which is to the left of the first picture. We're looking at the back now. It's a single lane alley. Not many people will park back there after dark. My parking is to the right, if you can put the front of the building back up. If you look to the very right, I've got about 26, 30 parking spaces there. That's where most likely their customers are going to park. I think that we have one cannabis store now in the city. Do we need two in Laurel and District 21? I just find that it could be possibly a real nuisance to the local property owners, myself being one of those. I think we're going to be constantly trying to run people off our parking lot because their customer is not coming to dine at the diner. They're coming in for medical marijuana. And I guess they're not going to meet with the folks out back that are doing the other kind of marijuana behind the dirty bookstore, as they call it. That alley is very suspicious. It's not going to attract, not many people are going to park. I wouldn't park my car there overnight. And I'd like for you to really consider, I'd like to know, what are we going to do with the second and third floor? How many more people? And if you've got, when I had meetings with them in 2018, their needs were 25 plus on employees, and they needed 30 plus parking spaces. The back of this building only has 16 parking spaces with one handicap spot. So I have some concerns having the business. I've been there since '76, and I just don't know. It's a great office building. I'm just not sure it's a good fit. And with that, thank you.
Well, thank you for your concerns, Mr.
Okay.
Wilkes. We will take them to heart. We have a second speaker listed, Chris, is it Hatcher? Oh, forget it. We've seen you, no. No, we're good. So we just, Carl DeWalt, would you like to come up and speak, Carl? Name and address, even though I know who you are.
Good evening, everyone. Carl DeWalt, 422 Prince George Street. I've been a Laurel resident for 34 years. Some of the things that the attorney, Chris, said, I'll repeat, but they're going to be a lot more brief. Approximately 1 year ago, I attended the Board of Appeals meeting and was prepared not to support Pure Hannah Synergy in their bid to transform the Tasty Diner into a medical marijuana dispensary. The biggest concern of my constituents at that time was the transformation would destroy the historical aura associated with the diner. Also, because of the location, we found the possibility of 2 violations of an ordinance passed by the city in 2016 concerning this endeavor. One was a 1 mile distance from another dispensary, and the other was within 1,000 feet of a house of worship. At that meeting, Pure Hannah withdrew their application. The other dispensary, although it has quite a couple different names, I call it True Wellness because that's the sign on the board. Originally at the 118 Washington Boulevard, that made them a little less than 1 mile from True Wellness, which would have been in violation. Now that at 116, they're a little bit over 1 mile, so that they fulfill that requirement set in the ordinance. The other one was the house of worship, which I marked off. The house of worship which was down by Dottie's Trophy in a strip mall. They actually handed me not too long ago an opinion by the Attorney General of the state of Maryland that these house of worship, due to the verbiage in the law, the house of worship has to own that property. So the strip mall would be exempt from that. I have to commend Francesa DeMauco-Palminteri on her desire, her strong work ethic, and her persistence in pursuing this. I know that the legislation in Maryland is 2 dispensaries per legislative district, and Laurel is in a big legislative district, which covers a large part of Prince George's County and the northern part, and Anne Arundel County too. I think it's honorable that businesses are drawn to Laurel, and I would like to think that it's because of our great men and women of the Laurel Police Department and the service they provide, and our excellent city administration that are very welcoming and helpful. And I'm hoping those are the 2 reasons why we attract these businesses. And to have 2 medical marijuana dispensaries, I think is good that we're drawing good businesses in here. As you know, I was a policeman here for almost 28 years, and that building used to be the B&E Tavern. It was also called the Sportsman's Pub. And just like the gentleman was explaining, I've been through a lot of fights in that bar, inside and out. There's been shootings, there's been stabbings. This was the hub of the drugs, violence, handguns, anything you could possibly imagine. And at the beginning of my career, a lot of the very violent pagan motorcycle groups hang out there. In fact, just down from there at a corner, we sat in a surveillance vehicle when the KKK was on the corner passing out flyers. That's how bad that area was. And to see this beautiful, beautiful building there, I think is such an upgrade. Plus, they have to sign a 10-year lease. And when the marijuana, last year, when the marijuana dispensary and the industry was only at an eight month with 60 dispensaries open. Now I think there's going to be close to 120 as the max. I think with 60 dispensaries open, they yielded almost $100 million in gross sales with medical marijuana. And every day you're seeing more and more uses for the pain. And I just want to briefly say about the stigma and the perception a lot of people have about these marijuana dispensaries. I've been to Revolution Relief several times. I've been to True Wellness, introduced myself, and they give me a nice tour. And I would encourage people to go to these places and get a tour of the place. It's very, very secure. You have to go through a process through the state of Maryland, including a doctor's visit with a pain management doctor. You have to regularly go back each year to visit that doctor and explain what's going on. And in order to purchase marijuana in these buildings, you have to have a card, which costs money to you, not only for the application, but for the card to get in there. So these aren't just drug dealers on the corner hanging out in a seedy little area. This business is mandated by the state of Maryland. I know it probably follows a lot of regulations with safety, lighting, everything that goes in there. And the people don't stay in there very long. They come for a short period of time. While I visited those, they come for a short period of time. They get whatever they need, and then they exit the building. And even when you drive by the two that are in existence now, there's not a lot of traffic parked in those areas. And there's not a lot of people hanging out in those areas like it used to be in that area. That was one of the worst areas in our city. And now it's transforming into actually being a nice area, which would be great for us and great for everybody in our community. And also the tax money that's going to yield from there, which is the bottom thing that I'm worried about, is going to be tremendous for 10 years, and it's going to last a lot longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carl. So with that, is there anyone else here that would like to speak in favor or against this resolution? Otherwise, we'll have some conversation and go forward. All right? So no one else to speak. Okay. At this point, Mr. Lee, would you like to say anything? You want me to say it?
I'm ready to. I think I've heard a wealth of information, and I appreciate it all going on the record. And Madam Chair, I'm ready to vote when you're ready to call it.
Okay. Any other discussion, opinions? No? All right, then. May we have a vote, please?
Madam Chair, I hereby move that we adopt the findings of fact and conclusion of law as outlined in the technical staff report for application number 894 and move approval of resolution number 19-03 BOA-116 as presented with the testimony that we discussed.
Thank you. May I have a second? Second. Thank you. Now may I have?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Ms. Les?
Yes.
Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Chairwoman Chenault?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I would like to say, though, as neighborly as you can be, that possibly some kind of signage for parking, Francesca, when you're in there, so that your neighbor is comfortable and doesn't feel as though he's being abused. I'm sure you've thought of that to take care of it. And again, that area has changed. The Dirty Bookstore has been there for, 60 years at least, and has progressed so that nobody hangs out there anymore. But it is an area that I'm sure you will be happy in, and I'm sure you'll make the city very pleased that you're there. So with that, any other discussion? No?
None.
Okay. Then I adjourn the meeting.